Hi, this is Kenneth Kolb, and this is The Right View, the politically incorrect common sense podcast. The podcast for fair and balanced discussions of topics outside the comfort zone, looking at issues from different points of view, intentionally provocative to elicit thoughtful debate, looking at social impact of virtual signaling and political correctness. Why only reinforce your established opinions? Get outside the echo chamber. Facts matter, information is knowledge, and knowledge is power. The Right View podcast. And today I'll be talking about how the liberal left is using woke equality to impose word control, knowing that those who control your words control your mind. For the past couple of years, it's been reported in some horrifying detail on how the woke left has completely transformed the city of San Francisco from one of the country's most beautiful cities into one of the scariest, besieged by crime, homelessness, and drug addiction. That is not an exaggeration. There are now more drug addicts in San Francisco than there are high school students. And if you haven't visited San Francisco in a decade or so, you may be surprised to learn that the city has become threatening and dangerous. So much so that the rate of property crime in San Francisco is at the highest of any big city in America. More than 6 cars are smashed and robbed every single day of the year. It's very depressing. But don't worry, the city's leaders have a plan to respond to this. And of course, it's not more policemen or stricter enforcement of the laws. That would be using too much common sense. Instead, the city of San Francisco's leaders see that as bigoted and have decided to solve the problem by banning words that imply San Francisco has a crime problem. If people aren't allowed to talk about crime, maybe they won't notice crime exists. That's the government's woke logic anyway. How can there be a problem if you can't adequately describe it? So recently, the city's Board of Supervisors decreed that there will be no more convicted felons in San Francisco. Going forward, ex-cons are to be called justice-involved individuals. Well, as it happens, the people they committed crimes against are also justice-involved individuals. So in other words, victims and criminals are now morally indistinguishable. That's on purpose. This is a woke equality. If there are no criminals and no victims, one is not morally superior to the other. It also means that there are no crimes. But therein lies a problem. Crime, nevertheless, continues to rise in the city. Meanwhile, the city of San Francisco continues the woke quest for equality. There are no longer any juvenile delinquents. The woke category has disappeared. Criminals under 18 are now referred to as young people impacted by the juvenile justice system, as if the system and not the kid committed the crime and is at fault, which is what the left in fact believes. It's your fault, not theirs. Check your privilege, Middle America. Drug addicts, meanwhile, in San Francisco are now called people with a history of substance use. Use, not abuse. Get it? Heroin addicts are now the same as insulin-dependent diabetics. Both use chemical substances. You can't call one better than the other. They're both exactly the same. Now you could laugh this off. San Francisco, after all, is where all the crazy things happen, but it is also the forefront of cultural and legal changes for the rest of the nation historically. But language makes thought possible. When the words disappear, so does our ability to think, describe, and debate about the ideas the words represent. When they prevent you from saying the obvious, over time it becomes impossible to see the obvious. And that's exactly, of course, why they do it. In San Francisco, the political majority woke agenda has gone off the rails and is disregarding and disenfranchising the honest, hardworking taxpayers who pay the salaries of these elected officials. It was Marcus Aurelius that said, "The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane." But in this case, it would seem that the majority is in fact insane. There is a new generation of speech police for defining a plethora of new crimes, given in to a small group of political activists who love all forms of diversity except any that disagree with their political thought. The chest beating of the thought police will only grow if left unchecked, and this far-left political correctness is a growing cancer on our freedoms and our liberty. I don't think you can overestimate how much people have been choking on political correctness and hate it. There were two studies about this recently. It was in New York Times, the front page story a few months ago. It was also The Atlantic about a year ago. The vast majority of liberals in this country hate it. They think political correctness has gone way too far. The PC word police are now going from the sublime to the ridiculous. Boston State House Representative Dan Hunt introduced a bill that gives a mandatory 6-month jail time plus a huge fine for using the word bitch. Yes, the word bitch that dates back 1,000 years to Old English, meaning a female dog. Today, forget what the true meaning of the word is. If someone hijacks the word for a new offensive meaning, let's not try to denounce the new meaning and bring it back to normalcy. No, let's just ban it. At this rate, we will have to repurpose the entire English language. It's all very self-centered and self-indulgent. The idea that words can convey multiple meanings, depending on usage, context, and even tonality of conversation, is lost on the word police. They are not only the law enforcers, but they are the judge, jury, executioner. The word bitch is the original insult and has had this dual meaning for hundreds of years. It needs no introduction, no following. It works as a standalone slur for just about any scenario, whether someone jostles you on the subway, beats you at poker, or breaks your heart. All you need is one word: bitch. Calling someone a bitch, for example, used to be pretty straightforward. But today, after many adaptations, reinventions, and attempts to reclaim the word, it's not totally clear bitch really means anymore. There are bad bitches and basic bitches, rich bitches and ratchet bitches, even perfect bitches, as Kanye West once famously described Kim Kardashian. You can bitch slap someone, wear a resting bitch face, or just tag the word onto the end of a sentence as, I'm a Miami bitch. When the word bitchin' is used as a verb, it means to complain. When it's used as an adjective, it means to be cool. To be someone's bitch can mean either to be owned by that person or to be their best friend, unless you're someone's prison bitch, which is always not good. But what's more crazy than sentencing someone to jail for 6 months for saying the word bitch is the fact that this madness has started in the ivory halls of our college campuses to be infused into our social culture by media, having been integrated into the HR departments of big corporations to finally end up in government at the California legislature as a criminal law. Words get banned, crazy is on the march, but it's part of an overall plan to make math into gibberish, ditch school grades, give everyone a trophy, throw milkshakes on politicians, mob newscasters at home, spit on people for expressing their political views, punch students for wearing the wrong color hat, chase politicians out of restaurants, concoct racial hoaxes, and brand biology as a phony construct. And now they want to make insults a felony. New York is recognized as arguably one of the most progressive states in the U.S. In fact, the state boasts a law that prohibits the discrimination of people for their pronouns, one that, if violated, could end up in a hefty fine. They're talking civil penalties of up to $250,000 for violations that are the result of willful, wanton, and malicious conduct if people refuse to use others' self-identified pronouns, names, or titles. Under the New York law, employers are required to use the name, pronouns, and titles, for example, Mr., Mrs., or Miss, with which a person self-identifies, regardless of that person's sex assigned at birth or the sex indicated on that person's identification. The word police march ever onward. In Berkeley, California, manholes are out as it removes gender-specific language from city code. A manhole will become a maintenance hole. Artisans will replace craftsmen, and firefighters and police officers no longer will be identified by their gender in Berkeley City new code. Some transgender and gender non-conforming people prefer to use pronouns other than he, she, or they, and use Z. The measure known as the LGBT Senior Bill of Rights in California is forcing jail time for using wrong transgender pronouns. Violations of the bill could, under limited circumstances, be treated as a misdemeanor with punishment of up to 1 year in jail and/or $1,000 fine. Preferred pronoun laws and the First Amendment intersect violently when transgender activism clashes with the prohibition on compelled speech. As the U.S. Supreme Court ruled, if there is any fixed star in our constitutional constellation, it is that no official, high or low, can prescribe what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion, or force citizens to confess by word or act their faith therein. Prohibiting the state from compelling individuals to express ideas they do not agree with. Compelling speech laws are unconstitutional. Laws requiring specific pronoun use run contrary to the First Amendment prohibition on compelled speech. Nevertheless, how can you believe in free speech but think the government can compel people to use certain pronouns when talking to others or making criminal certain words? No one likes to be living on eggshells. With the PC word police on an ever-vigilant duty, you are now exposed to not only social but legal and criminal liability. Those who control your words control your mind, your thoughts, and ultimately your behavior. And that is the right view. If you like what you hear in this podcast, please click subscribe below and recommend it to a friend. Support the First Amendment and help promote thoughtful debate and balanced discussion. Click on the Patreon icon and become a part of the politically incorrect, common sense discussion.